So let's get underway, and people will still, I'm sure, continue to join in the next few moments. You're all very welcome to this Heritage Council webinar to prepare and offer some tips and some advice for the forthcoming Heritage Week. Now, remember, this year it's an opportunity to celebrate the return of Heritage Week in person. I know that there are still some people suffering with COVID and struggling with COVID, but our lives have changed remarkably in the last 6 months once again, and we are able to enjoy so many events and have the return of most of our normal lives. So it's lovely to have Heritage Week back in person. And this year, of course, it will concentrate on inclusivity and sustainability. Two things that, if you can combine them together, that will be a great achievement. And some of what we will talk about today hopefully will give you some practical tips and thoughts about how you might change or shape your own project or your own plans for Heritage Week to try to match those requirements. Indeed, there will be an award for the project that is deemed to be sustainable and inclusive, and of course delivers something really exciting as well. But we know about the passion in this sector. You are all extraordinarily enthusiastic and all extraordinarily committed from so many walks of life in so many places. I see people from Louth and Donegal, Bear Island, Carlow, Kilkee, Clarecastle, Moygara Castle, and so on. And it's lovely to see you all and to see you giving up your time at lunchtime to be part of this webinar. So my name is Susan O'Keefe, and I will be moderating the remainder of the session. And we will have a variety of speakers, and we're hoping to, as I say, give you a practical start to your Heritage Week project. And perhaps those of you who are a bit more advanced, maybe just a reminder and a reassurance that you're all going in the right direction. So I'm delighted, first of all, to call on Pierce O'Keefe, who is the Head of Communications and Public Affairs at the Heritage Council, and also to thank Caroline, who's here today signing for the webinar.
Camille Mahat, Susan, Diviljog, Tasulam Gushov, Kamahar Majin, Tibikina Tashib, Tafat Rurov, Hicket Seminar Grace on Shop, August Gonadina Nach, Gonadina Adrasto, a Regate Seminar, Tafat Rurov Rash, Gonadini Nachra and Chin, this Bishop, Pierce O'Keefe, Bonistar Commerce, Leshagor Lyrachte, August Tasulam, coming a seminar shop, Usajach, Div, Tugulura Kind Story Space Shula Letiach, so Tom Kinsa Gamonishiv, Yog Salt Ashta. So hello everybody, you're very welcome to this webinar on organising sustainable and inclusive events for National Heritage Week. And to those who watched the first webinar, you're very welcome back, and I'm glad you found it useful enough that you saw fit to return. For those who weren't here last week, I'm Pierce O'Keefe, as Susan says, the Head of Communications and Public Affairs with the Heritage Council, and I hope you find today's webinar helpful. You can go back and watch last week's webinar on the National Heritage Week website, where we gave an overview of this year's themes and heard from some event organisers from years gone by who had really good tips and tricks. So do go back and watch that if you think you might find it useful. We've some really interesting speakers coming up today also, and I'm sure you'll get loads from them. And just to repeat what Susan said very quickly, this year for the National Heritage Week Awards, there will be an award given for the best sustainable and inclusive events. So these are one-off awards as the emphasis shifts from year to year. So we really look forward to seeing how you approach your events with these themes in mind. And if there are any doubts about the best way to organise these types of events, the speakers you're about to hear will hopefully put any of those doubts to rest. And if they don't manage to do that, we will of course answer any outstanding questions you might have throughout the webinar. So as I said at the opening of last week's webinar, I'm very excited about this year's National Heritage Week, and I think we all welcome the full return of in-person events this year, and just hoping that the weather is kind to us and to you in August. We will of course continue to promote the events, and some of you may have already heard our National Heritage Week radio ad in the car on the way to work. But we're going to keep that promotion going throughout the summer to make sure as many people as possible are aware of the events that you're putting together. And I know many of you have already submitted your events, so do keep them coming. So as the least interesting person you'll have to listen to today, I won't keep you any longer. I'll hand you over to Lila.
Hi everyone, thank you, Pierce. My name is Lila Fair, and I work with DHR Communications, and I'm helping the Heritage Council to organize National Heritage Week. Some of you may remember me from our session last week. So at this webinar, we are celebrating the return of in-person events, as Pierce said. And I wanted to share with you a new feature on our website that will help you keep track of the events that you're interested in for National Heritage Week. So the feature is called My Events Trail, and it essentially helps you to create a reference list. So each event listed on the What's On tab on our website will have a little heart next to it. And when you click on the heart, you will see it turn pink and the event will be added to your events trail. And then to look at your list of events, you will click on the pink button at the top of the screen next to the Organisers portal button and the login, log out button. So from there on that page, you can access your list as well as email it to yourself or to other people if you want to share what you're up to for Heritage Week with your friends or family. You can also print it and share it on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, which will not only help you to curate your Heritage Week experience and plan ahead in the weeks leading up to Heritage Week, but help to promote your own project and projects of other people by sharing this with social media and other outlets. So the feature will be launched in the next couple of days. It's not out yet, but keep your eye on the website for that. And just to finish up, I'd like to remind everyone that the deadline for uploading events and projects for an opportunity to be featured in local media is July 7th. And the final deadline for uploading everything to our website is August 23rd, just after Heritage Week is over. Additionally, when you are uploading your event information, and as Pierce said, we're happy to have so many people already sending in events and projects, I'll just remind you to please include an image for your event in a JPEG or a PNG format. That would be very helpful, and it helps promote your event as well. If people see a wonderful picture, they're more likely to click on it. Additionally, please remember to include the date and the time of your event. It's the most important information that anyone would want, especially with our new events trail feature. A few folks are leaving that out, so I'll just remind you to include the date and the time of your event. So finally, just a reminder again to tag Heritage Week on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Use our hashtag for the year, which is hashtag Heritage Week 2022. That's the best way for us to actually see your posts, to get a little notification to say that somebody has tagged us in a post and for us to potentially promote it. So if anyone has any questions, I'm just on the other end of an email or a phone call, and I'll finish up there. And we have some incredible speakers for you. So I'll hand it right over to Susan. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Leila. And I'm sure you'll put the email in the chat for people to see. Please don't be afraid to come forward. Sometimes things occur to you only at the end of the session or indeed later in the day, but it's kind of percolating in your brain. So I must ask them that the team are all up for it and going to be working very hard in the next few weeks to deliver a great Heritage Week. So I'm delighted to introduce Alia Kamal, who works with the Heritage Council, who's going to talk about inclusivity. And you're welcome, Alia, and you might remind people again of the dates of Heritage Week, because it's easy to let it slip. So you might start by reminding us when it is.
Hi, Susan. Hi, I hope everybody can hear me okay. I lost you there for a minute. You can hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great. I'll make a start. So hi, everyone. My name is Alia Kamal, and I am the Cultural and Inclusive Heritage Officer for the Heritage Council. And today I'm just going to spend the next 5-10 minutes giving you a few tips on how you can try and make your Heritage Week event as inclusive as possible. And so I'm going to talk very briefly about what I mean when I say inclusive and what inclusivity is. I'm going to give you some tips of things you might think about before your event, things you might think about doing during your event, and even a few follow-up things that you might want to do afterwards. And I suppose the first thing to say is that inclusivity is a very big area, and I'm aware that there are lots of different organisations attending this seminar today, and many of you already do an awful lot in this area. So I'm not claiming to be comprehensive at all in the next few minutes, but I'm hoping that I'll say a couple of things that might just get you thinking, maybe things you can think about doing this year, things you might think about doing next year or in your ongoing activities of your groups or organisations, or maybe even just a bit of reassurance to feel that yes, we're already doing things in the right kind of area. So just to make a start, inclusivity, I suppose, is really about making your Heritage Week event or the activities of your group or your organisation in general, making them so that anyone who wants to participate can participate in an equal and dignified manner. I suppose it's about supporting participation of people to the greatest extent possible, regardless of who they are. And so I suppose the key ideas really are around participation. It's about dignity and respect. And I suppose one of the things I wanted to kind of highlight in this regard, the key ingredient, if you like, the thing that I found that is really makes a difference in being successful in being inclusive is actually around the invitation that you make to people, about making a genuine and personal invitation to people to participate. And what I mean is, you know, it's all very well having wheelchair access to your venue, but if you don't feel personally and genuinely invited and included in that venue, then why bother? The wheelchair access is kind of irrelevant if the experience when you get there doesn't really feel like it's for you. So it's definitely not about, you know, we've decided that you can be included in what we're doing. It's more about, please, we'd love it if you came along, let's have a relationship, let's see where it takes us. And I suppose it's many of you will know this already, but it is slightly about mindset, and it's certainly about kindness, and it's about being interested in other people and encouraging and supporting participation. So like I say, I hope I'm not sounding patronising in saying that. I just thought it'd be useful to kind of go back to first principles at the start. Because the fundamental ingredients of inclusivity really are very simple indeed. And like I say, many of you are already doing this stuff. So just moving on to things that you could maybe be thinking about before your Heritage Week event. You've got the concept, we've got the principle, but what can you actually be doing practically? It's kind of useful, I think, to break it down into that kind of before, during and after stage. And one of the first things I think it's useful to stop and think about is maybe how would you like to grow your audience? Who would you like to be participating in your event? Who was not traditionally being included or participating in what you're doing? And it can be useful to think along the lines of the kind of demographic definitions that are put on all of us, gender identity, age, you know, sexual orientation, economic status, disability, race, language. Sometimes those things are a useful framework to start thinking, okay, you know, we really never see any young people at our events, or you know, really, we'd love to include some of the new communities that we know are living in our area. How can we include them in what we're doing? And then I think really the next step, once you've kind of maybe had to think about this, is reaching out locally, or maybe even thinking kind of hyper locally. I think there are often a lot of things on your doorstep. Now, I appreciate that some of you are joining us from very rural areas indeed, but I do think that there's always an infrastructure wherever you are that you can maybe tap into in terms of reaching people, and it does, I think this is where the biggest potential for being inclusive kind of lies. Thinking about how are you distributing the information about your event, how are you communicating what your event will consist of, what it will involve, what people will be expected to do, if you like, at your event. and what's in your local area, who's in your local area that you can kind of tap up. So I'm thinking, you know, are there youth groups in your local area? Are there direct provision centres? Are there care homes or day centres? All of these places would have individuals who are responsible for coordinating activities for the people that they cater for, and they are great people to get in touch with. They're usually only delighted to receive a phone call or an email or an invitation of some kind to say, please, we'd love to have you come to our event. But you might need to even do a bit of lateral thinking. You know, where in your local area are there notice boards? Where are those little informal information points that exist all around us? So, you know, in the local post office, the supermarkets, notice boards can be great. The pubs, dare I say it, there's a very loyal cohort of people that you would find in pubs who, again, might love to be involved in your event. The men's sheds, the IWCA, sorry, could you go to those places and could you make that personal invitation? And also just a note on language, I just thought it might be worth mentioning that, you know, there may be a line in your post or in your information that you might want to translate into another language. Now, Google Translate can be your friend, although I would suggest getting it verified if you can at all, because I know it's not foolproof, but I'm thinking possibly Ukrainian might be a language that you might want to seriously consider including in your promotional material this year. And obviously social media, there are things that you can do there to ensure that it's inclusive. Make sure that you are using camel case so that adaptive technologies can read what you're posting. Put your hashtags at the end and not in the middle. There's loads of tips. I won't go into them all here, but I do know that we have a webinar where we previously covered promoting and communicating your events on the Heritage Week website. I hope I'm right in saying that. So I would encourage you to have a look at that, because there are small steps that you can take in how you're talking about your events that can massively increase the inclusivity of what you're doing. And likewise, thinking about your venue, thinking about on the day, are there things that we could be doing that would make a more egalitarian, I suppose, experience for people when they come to our event? So, for example, at the venue where you're holding your event, is there a wheelchair accessible access or entry to your building? Could you think about making that the only and main entry to the building on the day of the event? That way it's a very nice equal experience and people aren't segregated or made to feel different. It's again coming back to those principles of dignity and respect. And can we accommodate assistance in our event? Can we make sure that the signposting that we provide to where we are on the day is at eye level, and that it's in a good font size? I'm a great champion of font sizes, people. Nobody wants small print. Everybody appreciates the larger print with a good contrast. And if you're looking for specific guidance in terms of kind of the graphic design or the layout, anything like that, I can recommend plenty of resources on the National Disability Authority website. There's lots of things you can draw on there. And lastly, could you actually make your event more inclusive in terms of including other voices? Very often we have time for questions and answers at the end of events. Could you maybe invite somebody to offer their own reflections in terms of how the content of the talk or the event compares to maybe their country of origin, or what they do in their community or in their culture? And how are you making that content inclusive and accessible? Could you print out your talk and have a large print copy of what you're saying available for people to take away? Are you giving room at the back for people that might want to wander in and out? People may not feel comfortable sitting at the front. I know I very often don't. So it's just small tweaks that you can make that just set the tone as well as kind of actually practically impact on your event. And then I'm skipping over a few things. I could go on, but just coming back to this idea of a personal invitation, I suppose the last thing I would say is that don't underestimate the power of a cup of tea and a conversation. If at all that can be accommodated in what you're doing, can you follow up with people after your event, invite them to come back to your group, invite them to join your organisation, and continue to participate, continue to build that relationship? Could you have more cups of tea? I think that is, tea is the road to inclusivity for sure. So I suppose I'll just close by saying, you know, give it a go. Your efforts will certainly be appreciated by people and certainly be rewarding. And if we could all do even one small thing to increase the inclusivity of our events this year, that would have a huge impact overall. So I'll stop there, but good luck everyone, and thanks.
Thanks so much, Alia, for some very useful tips. And remember, if you don't know someone in a particular community, you've never met them, but there'll probably be someone you know that might be able to introduce you to that community, that group, and therefore make it, as Alia says, personal. With a cup of tea, if you can manage it, even better. People are very warm and always want to be part of what's going on. Once you've made a new group, friends, you'll find it's easier then to encourage other groups to join in as well. So we're going to go to Sive now from Birurban in Stoneybatter in Dublin. And Sive is going to talk about two projects, Sive. One is with a collaboration relating to sustainable woodwork, and the second one is about water heritage. And Sive, you have about 7 minutes, so
I'll set a timer. So I don't go over.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you very much for introduction, Susan, and a big hello to everyone today, and a big thank you to Heritage Council for hosting this event. As Susan said, my name is Sive Fitzgerald. I'm a co-director of Birurban, and we're a nature-based social enterprise in Stoneybatter, and we've been active under that title for 7 years now. And we were fortunate enough last year also to be runners-up for the Water Heritage Awards with our video about our rain garden project. And that actually came at a much-needed time because we were in the process of losing our community space after 5 years of having it as an active community hub. So a huge thank you for lifting our spirits and validating what we do through your awards process. And that's something else I'd say kind of at the forefront of Heritage Week, is that it's such a wonderful platform and opportunity to showcase the work that you are doing and what you are passionate about. Because you wouldn't be in this unless you are doing something you are passionate about and something that is very important to your background and your history and your culture and your heritage. So I'll start by saying, when incorporating sustainability into events you're running, you need to start by aligning your principles. And, you know, in our case, it's primarily our eco-friendly goals. This will, of course, change based on the kind of event you're running, but regardless, your participants should be leaving your event having opened a discussion, which will later lead to better awareness and insight into eco-friendly and sustainable practices going forward. What I mean by this is that the more you can do to trigger the conversation around the changes we can make on both an individual and a collective level to tackle climate issues will have a knock-on effect after your event, which is what we want. And being a nature-based social enterprise, sustainability, and we already have a head start on this because it's at the core of what we do. Climate action is already what we do. So the previous events we ran last year, the runner-up project was a video that we did, and to say it was a breeze is not the case at all. So if you're struggling with getting media together, if you're struggling with, you know, my background isn't in video and I created that video. And of course, there's a million tools and different apps and things you can use to create video. But if you're kind of struggling along the process, don't panic. My laptop was crashing repeatedly at that point. I would get about an hour out of it before it would die. I would have to constantly save, and all of that kind of can be disheartening, but as long as you keep chipping away at it, you will come out with a result. And also to say that result doesn't have to be perfect. The whole point of events like this is to communicate something that is at the core of what you believe in. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, a lot of the time, if something is rough around the edges, it's more approachable and it's more relatable to other people viewing it or attending it. And then so kind of moving away from the media side of things then, in terms of the woodworking event that we held, we did a demonstration with a dear friend of ours called Fergus de Bruin, who's an incredible woodworker who lives down in Cork. And he copses his own forest, which means he works in conjunction with nature and the forest locally and native Irish woodland, in celebration of it almost, to create pieces of furniture where you're not destroying the wildlife, you're not taking from the wildlife, you're working in collaboration with it. So the event we ran with him, we actually did it with Collins Barracks, the local museum, and they were the location for the event. So that's a huge thing as well, is to be able to collaborate with your local entities, whether it's your local college, your local school, or outside of that, your local parks, your local green spaces, or your local museums. I'm not going to say this was an easy process either, because it took a long time for us to actually, you know, bridge that connection with them. And as was said by Alia and Susan before, we all have connections in our own community that we can take advantage of in order to push things forward. So if you're having trouble sending an email through to one particular entity, you're not really getting a response, put your feelers out. You may have neighbors, you may have other local entities or institutions that you have friends in that can get you that connection and can get the ball rolling in order to talk to other people and host these events. I will also say that, like, you know, a huge amount to do with like procurement for events is important as well. Try to keep your waste down to a minimum. I mean, with Fergus's workshop, we had a lot of shavings at the end of it, but they're all obviously natural materials, so they're biodegradable. So, you know, that's a huge part of it too, to make sure you're reducing and kind of trying to get zero waste out of that event. And yeah, as I said before, to trigger conversations is the most important thing. You know, you want people to be leaving your event afterwards and thinking about everything that they have absorbed during it and talking about it afterwards and sparking those conversations. So yeah, I honestly think that that's pretty much all I can say for the time being. I'll keep it short, I'll keep it sweet, but yeah, it can be a stressful process sometimes, but power through, you'll be grand. Yeah.
Well done. And well done for being encouraging and for making your own progress and for being runner-up last time round. Syed is right. If you're making a video, don't worry too much if it's not entirely perfect. There is a link there in the chat for some advice and some help. It's a great tool in the box that you have available to you to help to promote what you do and to show people what you do, so that those who can't make it out can see it on YouTube or wherever. It's a real benefit to your own organization as well. So don't get too troubled about it. And if you have someone you can call on, all the better. Ask for help. Sometimes people love nothing better than to be asked, can you please help me? Do you know, I'd be delighted. And often it's very much as easy as that. So I'd like to move on now, if I may, to the wilderness of beautiful Rocinver, and to Jan, who works at the gorgeous Organic Centre in Rocinver. And Jan has also some years of experience and is, of course, I suppose your organisation is absolutely understands sustainability and biodiversity, and have been practicing it pretty much since you set out your stall. So maybe again with 7 minutes, if you can, Jan, just give us some focus on those practical tips. You were talking earlier about with us about encouraging children and getting people in who want to know how to be practical themselves. So tell us about your best experience for Heritage Week. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak, and thank you for organising this webinar as well. It's very useful, I think, to share information in chat and in webinars in terms of all the groups that are working on heritage projects as we speak, probably. Here at the Organic Centre, Heritage Week is one of our big events during the year, and we really start working on what we want to do in Heritage Week probably 2 months prior to, as a minimum, 2 months prior to the event itself and the week itself. And we look at, and when we're planning for Heritage Week, we look at our events, we look at how to include as many people as possible. We look at personal invitations for local groups, including this year Ukrainian groups, refugee groups, people with disabilities. So we try and be inclusive as possible, and we have a general open door policy. We look for funding so that the events are free for everyone to take part in, and ultimately we invite everyone, but we do target specific groups in terms of inclusivity as well. All in terms of sustainability, I mean, that is, as Susan said, what we're all about. So we really work hard and have really focused on it in the last couple of years on how we can make our events more sustainable all the time. So we've done things like introduce, where we've got coffee is being served, we insist on recycled cups, for example. With workshops, any workshops that we run for adults and or children, we make it so that those crafters and makers that we're working with use natural materials. So we're not buying in plastic, we're not buying in anything that basically is causing harm to the environment. So, for example, all our arts workshop will use things like stone and sticks, things that will biodegrade after usage, and things that we can gather here at the centre for free as well, and that keeps costs down as well. So it's a sort of double whammy in many respects. In terms of the food and the catering, we only use local, sustainable and seasonal food as well. We don't buy in anything that's out of season. For example, we use stuff directly from the gardens here at the centre, and we don't have anything that's travelled air miles in the kitchen at all. So, and then from the kitchen, once the event's in full swing, as it were, we compost all the food waste these days as well. So everything goes into either 2 sets of composts, really, one for uncooked food and one for cooked food, and everything then gets broken down and put back into the garden as well over the course of the year. So we have an inclusive menu as well, so vegan, veggie, gluten-free, all of these things help bring people in, and I do value the cup of tea, absolutely, so we have all of those as well. All our promotion work is paperless these days. We may put up a couple of posters in the local supermarkets, but that's about the sum of any paper that we use. We use social media to send out invitations. We use a database that we've created to send out personal invitations to around 5,000 people. And we really do focus on keeping the paper out of the equation as well. And then workshops, again, we will really look at upcycling workshops. We recycle all the materials. So we've ran events, building stuff out of pallets, etc. So, and we really focus on the local environment and what we can do to protect it. And so all of our workshops are around what you can do at home, what we can all do to protect the local environment and increase biodiversity and protect biodiversity. And we also focus then on giving people, so we'll often give people top tips in the workshops as what they can do at home, so they can really take what they've learned in the workshop and take it home and practice at home as well, and increase biodiversity and sustainability in their gardens or their workplaces at home as well. We do a lot of community engagement for Heritage Week, so we really work with local groups. And we also work with lots of crafters and local makers as well, all again using sustainably sourced materials. So people like woodworkers, people who are making potteries, people who are making products out of recycled tin cans as well, for example. So we do all of that as well. So effectively, we try and take a holistic overview of everything and introduce and invite and promote activities that really are
sustainable, and that really demonstrate the personality of the centre and really demonstrate how beautiful Leitrim is, and really put the passion for we are very passionate about sustainability and always have been, and we really try and bring that into all the workshops that we do, so everything gets showcased in a sustainable and inclusive way. That's really all I've got to say as well.
No, I think that covers a multitude, and you're always exceptionally busy. Do you have a top tip for us to take home?
I think the top tip is planning. Just plan and start thinking who you want there from the very get-go, and how you're going to run a workshop or an event in the most sustainable way that you can, because every little bit does help.
Great. And if we look on your website, I'm sure we'll find some useful thoughts and ideas as well.
Well, absolutely.
Thanks so much. And now I'd like to introduce, just reminding you all of the dates for Heritage Week, the 13th to the 21st of August. I'd like to introduce Rory now, and Rory works with the Local Authorities Water Programme, which is a partner of the Heritage Council. And Rory, you are very welcome this afternoon.
Thank you, Susan. I'm actually joining you by a mobile phone because my laptop doesn't seem to want to play a game. But thank you very much. I think my colleagues who've spoken before me have more or less said everything that there is to be said. But I suppose just to give you some background, especially about Water Heritage Day and the role of the Local Authority Waters Programme. So I suppose just to start my own background, Rory O'Connor is my name. I suppose I've been delivering Heritage Week events for, well, the best part of 15 years, I'd say, in various projects, in the Burren Life Project, in the Mulcair Life Project, and now with the Local Authority Waters Programme. So I love Heritage Week. I love everything to do with Heritage Week, and I think it's a fantastic initiative by the Heritage Council. And I suppose that takes me on to the Local Authority Waters Programme. So for you, those who are on the call who aren't aware, LawPro, or the Local Authority Waters Programme, is a local government shared service. It was established in 2016, initially as the Waters and Communities Office, and then in 2018 it became the Local Authority Waters Programme. But essentially, it's a local government shared service delivering for the River Basin Management Plan. And as you probably know, we're in the planning phase for the third cycle of the Water Framework Directive, and there's a draft River Basin Management Plan out there. But I suppose the important thing in relation to Heritage Week relates to the fact that there are community water officers spread right throughout the country. Now, invariably, these community water officers cover more than one county. Some only cover one county, but invariably they cover several counties. So my colleagues are spread in offices right throughout the country, and I'd certainly encourage you to get in touch with them if you are organising an event to do anything to do with water as part of Heritage Week, because they can certainly support you technically, and indeed we have a small funding pot available to support community groups to host events. So that's just a little bit of background. The final Sunday, as you mentioned, Susan, Sunday the 21st of August is Water Heritage Day itself, and as I said, LawPro are honoured and thrilled to be a partner with the Heritage Council in the staging of Heritage Week, and it's something we really look forward to every year. It's something we're thrilled to undertake. So I suppose just in relation to the water side of it, and some basic principles in terms of sustainability and I suppose responsibility. I think the most important thing is our focus obviously is on the water environment. And in terms of that, I think anyone who's organising events needs to give significant consideration to the impact that any events or indeed any activities might have on sensitive areas. And I'm not just talking about SACs or SPAs, I'm talking about any type of sensitive site. And in terms of our planning, and a lot has been spoken about thus far in terms of the planning, and I'd echo everything that has been said. I think we need to take a holistic and a consistent approach in terms of event planning for Heritage Week. So we need to create events, obviously, that are successful, because that's the keystone of what we want. We want people to engage in their local heritage, but it also has to be fun. And I think the fun element is really, really important. But in making it successful and making it fun, we also have to be responsible, and we have to do so we have to organise such events in a sustainable manner. And I think, like my colleagues who've spoken have mentioned a lot of that. But just in terms of being responsible, one of our big concerns is health and safety, obviously. And health and safety in the water environment is particularly important. But it's not just from a drowning perspective. Obviously, we don't want anyone to drown, but just all the other dangers that are there. So certainly one of the top tips I'd recommend for organisers is to do a risk assessment of the site that you're going to use. Ideally, use a publicly accessible site. We spoke last week at the Organisers webinar last week about public liability insurance. So there's a whole issue about if you're utilising a local authority site, be sure to talk to the local authority heritage officer or any other officers, biodiversity officer, local authority waters officer, or community water officer, should I say. So that's really important just in terms of doing that risk assessment, but also being sure that you're in undertaking an event along a river or accessing a river, be sure that event has a positive impact on the participants, and in so doing that they're enjoying it, they're learning, they're engaging with their water heritage. But also it's an opportunity for you as an organizer to engage with local landowners and indeed local river managers, be they catchment managers, be the community water officer, be they your local fisheries officer. There's lots of opportunities to engage people. So that's just from the responsibility perspective, and there's lots more. I suppose the one other point I should mention there, Susan, is just protocols in terms of accessing water. And I think Lorcan mentioned last week the protocol in terms of biosecurity. So entering water, possibly bringing contaminants within a water body, invasives or aquatic invasives. So the protocol is very simple. It's clean, check, dry. That's the protocol. Clean your equipment, check your equipment, dry your equipment before the event. So that's all available. That protocol is all available. But just from a sustainability perspective, I think
for a second, please. Are you saying to people that by and large, hosting events that are in the water are more tricky, are really more dangerous, and are not a good idea? Or
no,
are
I'm
you
not saying that at all.
Just for clarity?
No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm simply saying is that if you are going to be doing, for example, a river walk, kick sample, looking at aquatic life within a river, be sure to do a risk assessment and be sure to follow proper protocols in terms of biosecurity. And there's a lot of support and a lot of resources materials available for that, Susan.
Okay.
Is that help clarify?
Yeah, no, just because some people might be thinking, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't go near it. It's too tricky, it's too messy, it's too dangerous. And of course, you're right. Water can be incredibly dangerous if you're not prepared. So maybe have somebody who has good experience of the terrain, of the water, what to do if someone, and so on. So maybe an extra little layer of planning if you're going in or very close to the water.
It's exactly that, Susan. It's that extra layer, and it's that site visit before the event, that risk assessment before the event. So I'll just give a very simple. This is one of the case studies that I actually had in the presentation that I'm not showing you, and it related to an event we had last year. It was actually a runner-up event with the Heritage Council, and it was I have to remember the name of it. In Search of Otter Poo. So that was the event. And it was a fantastic event. It was run in conjunction with Anacotty Tidy Towns. So the risk assessment in relation to that event, and it involved a lot of young children, a lot of families, it looked at where are the dangers? What are the potential dangers? So they related to invasives, they related to falling in on one side of the river, falling in on the other side of the river. But the single biggest danger is actually a footbridge, and children being under that footbridge and banging their head, or indeed adults banging their head. So it's little simple things like that you just have to look out for. Just to wrap up, just on the sustainable side of things, I think one of the key aspects, and my colleagues have mentioned some of these already, but in terms of creating a positive impact away from your event, it's really important that you consider the environmental aspects that we've mentioned, the social and the economic impacts, and the benefits that then accrue within the local community. So my colleagues have mentioned the suppliers. So if you're doing catering, do it locally. If you're organising transport, do it locally. Ideally carpool or provide a bus. So I suppose I've been very fortunate in that I've ran probably 75 Heritage Week events over the last 10, 15 years. And it's been great the way we've been able to be so creative in terms of how we look at sustainability at that local level. So I think I'll wrap it up there, Susan. Just in terms of top tips, contact your community water officer, contact your heritage officer, and then in some counties, there's lots more people you can contact. You can contact Inland Fisheries Ireland, you can contact National Parks and Wildlife Service, the local conservation ranger. You can contact, in some counties, we have biodiversity officers. Include them, include local landowners, include local anglers. So build it into something really enjoyable. And then the final tip, Susan, if I may, is do things that are not within the norm. So don't be afraid to organise an event at 6 o'clock in the morning. You'd be surprised how many people will turn up.
Thanks so much, Rory. I'll definitely be coming to one of your 6 o'clock events because you're organising them now. Jan, may I just come back to you, and please feel free now, all of those taking part in the webinar, if you have a particular question that relates to the people sitting in front of you, this is your opportunity. Jan, you've also, like Rory, had a lot of experience with children, and I know that children are very important in the group. Is there any particular tip you would give, either A, to engage them, or B, to avoid them injuring themselves? Because you, as I say, have a lot of experience with smaller children who are so excited to be there and wanting to learn. How do you make the best out of that experience?
I mean, we would obviously risk assess as well, but one of the things that we found really useful was we would use the adult volunteers to really support someone that's facilitating a workshop with children. So if there's children who are likely to run down the river or run off up the hills, then we would have people who would help gather those children back in. And I think that's the top tip. Have enough bodies in the workshop space, not necessarily running the workshop, but have enough people around who can just keep an eye on things in case, and look for the potential risks that are about to happen. So, yes. I mean, we run the events, as Rory says, in terms of the water and the rivers here, and that's very exciting for children, seeing fish and seeing, all sorts of species in the water. And I think that kind of event is a perfect Heritage Week event, but have enough bodies just in case.
Okay, so have your team of volunteers if you're going to be in a space where you know that children are just going to do exactly the thing that you don't really want them to do. So you do need bodies. Don't try to be doing it all yourself. Keep your experts doing the expert bit and your volunteers helping to keep everyone safe, children and adults. That's great tip indeed. Thank you. Sive, I'm just wondering, just to come back to you briefly, if I may, when you were talking about your friend Fergus de Bruin from Cork, and you were talking about the sustainable wood piece, and you were based in Stoneybatter, which is obviously an exceptionally urban, very old urban community there. How do they reach out? How do they react to that kind of a project, which wasn't, he's not there. He copses his wood somewhere else, and you brought him in. So what was the response to something that didn't look like it would be a fit?
Well, I think actually Fergus lived in Stoneybatter for a long period of time before returning to Cork. So he already had ties within the community here. But it was also a case of, since we were holding it in Collins Barracks, that's such a epicenter of our heritage and our culture in general. So I don't think it was a kind of, it didn't seem as kind of outwards a concept. It made sense to people because they were doing it in a space where there was already pieces that were similar to what he was demonstrating, the processes of existing. So that kind of linked in very nicely, where if you were going to the museum, you could see the pieces that were made hundreds of years ago that he is now using the same practices of now. So that connection between space, Cork and Stoneybatter, he already had the connection there. I don't think it made a massive difference because the connection between space and history and culture all took place in the same area. So it did make sense. Yeah.
But it's a lovely story that it turned that he had his own connection. So very often in a smaller community, there may be someone who's gone away. They're part of a family somewhere, invite them back. As Alia was saying, in terms of including groups, inviting people to come, sometimes to come back and enrich the environment they used to live in with a new skill or with an old skill that they've redeveloped is another lovely way of introducing something different into your Heritage Week project, maybe. So
100%.
And it worked exceptionally well for you. And as you say, Collins Barracks, a beautiful place to host. Yeah. Alia, somebody remarked in the chat that it can be difficult in August reaching groups of children because, of course, the schools are still out, and the sort of more natural groups that might assemble with children during term time are not actually at work during that time. So yes, of course, people can get in touch before that, but if they're only thinking about it now, have you any particular, I know it's a particular question, but another way of rousing children?
Yeah, I mean,
in groups, maybe.
It is something that comes up regularly. I mean, one of the pieces of advice I would give is think about any infrastructure that might be in place that continues over the summer. So youth groups, for example, would definitely run on. Again, you can think about contacting your heritage officers as well. They would be aware of any summer programs that might be going on, but also maybe a bit of lateral thinking. Go think about the places where kids or their parents go and would be. So again, you know, I mentioned supermarkets and post offices. You know, is there a notice board in the local park? Could you see if you could get some posters or some information there? Cinemas, you know, the places that kids might kind of hang out can sometimes be a way in. It's not that they've disappeared, it's just that they're in a different, it's not that the kids have disappeared, it's just that they're kind of physically located in different places. And if, I don't know, I can't speak for other parents, but I'm over the summer only desperate to find things to occupy my son over the summer. So if something like Heritage Week is a bit of a godsend as far as I'm concerned, because it you know, there's just such a wealth of activities. So I think if you can get information into places where people are, that can sometimes help.
Right. And Alia, finally, is there any particular, I know the whole thing about social media is vast and you could talk for quite a length, but is there anything particular that you would draw attention to? You touched on it a little bit in your opening remarks. Is it that photographs are the best thing that always draw attention in terms of building up, for example, to your own event? Is there a particular thing that if you do, you know, it just gives you a bit of a boost? Because people work very hard sometimes with their social media, but don't always make the impact that they kind of would like. And then people get a bit disheartened with the whole thing. So is there anything in particular? I do know, I appreciate it's a large question, but.
Well, and you're asking about ensuring that your social media is accessible. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, accessible, and I suppose is making some kind of impact, that you feel that the effort you're putting in, you're not just getting, you know, one like or one thumbs up or whatever.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. In terms of the content of your social media, there's a few things. It's really useful if you can use the simplest language possible, and don't use all caps. Anyone using screen readers or even anyone even visually slightly compromised, all capital letters is really unhelpful. Try and use camel case, so as in capital letters at the beginning of sentences and words within hashtags that you're using, because that enables screen readers to function properly. Short sentences, limit the number of emojis, and where possible use text to describe your images. So that means that people who are again using screen reading devices who maybe can't see those images get a sense of what's contained in those images. And all of the social media platforms do provide guidance on how to use those platforms to ensure maximum accessibility. And also, just to say, I can't remember whether I said this earlier, if you're able, we were talking about videos, weren't we, and how useful it can be to post even short videos, and again, the social media platforms, a lot of them now provide automatic subtitles, captionings. Certainly YouTube, I know Facebook do. I'm just trying to think who else does. I think Twitter we're rolling it out at the beginning of, we're meant to be rolling it out last year. I think they do, don't they? Now it can be a bit hit and miss, but it's certainly a good help, better than nothing for sure. So I hope some of those things kind of help. And then obviously use the hashtag. I know Lila's literally standing by to be retweeting and sharing the word, spreading the word. There it is, Heritage Week 2022. And so, yeah, hopefully that can help get your event out there even more.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Alia. And you'll see there in the chat that Leila has added the general guide, the heritage, sharing your heritage project on social media. She's attached the link there, which will be very useful. So it remains, I think, to thank everybody for attending the webinar today, to wish you all the best of luck with your planning as well as with your projects, to take the time to think a little bit around the subjects that we've raised today in terms of inclusivity, in terms of sustainability, in terms of inviting people and making them, feel warm about the project that you're doing, making sure you've thought about your insurance, making sure you've thought about the small ones. And, if you are using social media, use the hashtag, please. That's a great way of building a great timeline of what's going on across the country. And so you've come from across the country, and thank you again for being so enthusiastic. Heritage Week, as Rory was saying, he's seen very many of them, and I think everyone realizes the passion and commitment that people have to heritage generally and to the Heritage Week in particular. So it's my pleasure also to wish you the best during that week, and to thank the Heritage Council for keeping faith with Heritage Week and keeping it moving and keeping it going. And to thank all of the participants today, Sive and Jan and Rory and Caroline for her signing, and for Alia and Leila for their help from the Heritage Council. So you take care, and see you hopefully some of you during Heritage Week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.